In every corner of the world, the name of St. Patrick is instantly recognized. Each year, on the 17th of March, millions wear green, decorate cities with shamrocks, organize parades, and celebrate Irish heritage. Streets fill with music. Churches hold solemn liturgies. Families gather to honor the man who became Ireland's most beloved saint. Yet beneath these familiar symbols lies a story far more dramatic and far more human than most people ever hear. Patrick was not Irish by birth. He never expected to become a missionary. He did not grow up dreaming of evangelizing distant lands. His journey toward sainthood began in chains. Before he became the Apostle of Ireland, he was a frightened 16-year-old boy, torn from his family by violent raiders, carried across the sea into slavery, and forced to spend years alone tending sheep on cold, windswept mountains. Everything that followed, the missionary journeys, the conversions, the churches he founded, and the transformation of Ireland grew from those painful years of suffering. Patrick later wrote that before his captivity, he hardly cared about God. Raised in a Christian household, he admitted with striking honesty that his faith was shallow. Religion felt familiar, but unimportant. His family believed, but he had not yet discovered a personal relationship with Christ. Only after losing everything did he begin to understand what faith truly meant. Unlike many saints whose lives survive only through stories written centuries later, Patrick left something extraordinarily precious: his own testimony. His work, the Confessio, is not a modern autobiography nor a carefully organized history. It is the heartfelt confession of an elderly bishop looking back on the astonishing ways God guided his life. Through his own words, we meet a man of humility rather than self-importance. Patrick calls himself a sinner, the least of all believers, and an unlearned man chosen not for his abilities, but for God's mercy. His writings reveal no desire for fame, only gratitude. Again and again, he gives all glory to Christ, convinced that every success of his mission came not from his own talent, but from divine grace. Because of these writings, historians can distinguish with confidence between Patrick's authentic life and the legends that later generations lovingly attached to his memory. Some of those stories became famous across the centuries. Did Patrick drive every snake out of Ireland? Did he explain the Trinity with a shamrock? Did Druids challenge him before pagan kings? Some traditions contain symbolic truths. Others are beautiful legends passed down through generations. Still others remain possible but cannot be proven. Throughout this documentary, we will carefully distinguish history from tradition whenever evidence allows, so that we may appreciate both the historical Patrick and the rich Christian heritage that grew around his name. To understand Patrick's extraordinary mission, we must first enter the world into which he was born, a world unlike modern Britain or Ireland. The mighty Roman Empire, which had ruled much of Western Europe for centuries, was beginning to weaken. Barbarian tribes pressed against its borders. Political instability spread through the provinces. The old order that once seemed permanent was beginning to crumble. Across the Irish Sea lay a land Rome never conquered, a patchwork of tribal kingdoms ruled by chieftains and shaped by ancient Celtic customs. Druids preserved religious traditions. Poets memorized long genealogies. Warriors sought honor in battle. Kings competed for power. It was into this complex and often dangerous world that Patrick would one day carry the gospel. But before he became its missionary, he first became one of its slaves. his greatest triumph began with his greatest tragedy. The young man who would baptize thousands first learned obedience while tending sheep in lonely fields. The future bishop first encountered God while shivering through bitter winters on remote mountainsides. The missionary who would preach hope to a nation first experienced despair as a captive far from home. Sometimes, God's greatest works begin where human hope seems to end. This is the true story of St. Patrick, not merely the patron saint of Ireland, but a former slave whose faith transformed a nation, a humble bishop whose influence still echoes 15 centuries later, and a man whose life reminds us that no suffering is beyond God's power to redeem. Chapter 1. Roman Britain, the world into which Patrick was born. To understand St. Patrick, we must journey back more than 15 centuries to a world undergoing rapid and irreversible change. Patrick was born in the late 4th century, most likely around AD 385, though scholars place his birth a few years earlier or later. The exact date remains unknown. Patrick himself never recorded it. Even his birthplace is uncertain. In his writings, he names a place called Banavim Taburnii, a location that has puzzled historians for centuries. Its precise site has never been identified. Some scholars place it along the western coast of Roman Britain, perhaps in present-day Western England. Others suggest southwestern Scotland. A few propose Wales. Despite centuries of research, no archaeological discovery has settled the question. This uncertainty reminds us of something essential. Patrick is not remembered because of where he was born, but because of what God accomplished through him. While his birthplace remains hidden by history, the world into which he was born is far better understood. Patrick entered life during one of the Roman Empire's most turbulent periods. For nearly 400 years, Rome had ruled Britain. Stone roads stretched across the countryside. Massive walls guarded the northern frontier. Cities flourished with markets, public baths, villas, temples, and administrative centers. Latin was widely spoken among educated families. Trade connected Britain with Gaul, Spain, Italy, and the wider Mediterranean world. To many, Rome seemed eternal. Yet beneath this appearance of stability, the empire was weakening. Political crises grew frequent. Emperors rose and fell with alarming speed. Civil wars drained resources. Heavy taxation burdened ordinary people. Meanwhile, tribes beyond Rome's borders sensed its vulnerability. The Picts raided from the north. The Scots, Irish raiders from across the Western Sea, attacked coastal settlements. Germanic tribes threatened eastern shores. Roman soldiers defended longer frontiers with fewer resources. The peaceful world Patrick's parents had known was slowly disappearing. Patrick's family belonged to the Romano-British Christian community. Christianity, once persecuted, had become accepted throughout the empire after Emperor Constantine's conversion in the early 4th century. Churches were built openly, bishops gathered at councils. The gospel spread into towns and rural communities. By Patrick's childhood, Christianity was well established in many parts of Roman Britain. Patrick was therefore not raised in a pagan household. Quite the opposite. His family had served the church for generations. In the Confessio, Patrick tells us that his father, Calpurnius, was both a deacon and a local Roman official. His grandfather, Potitus, had served as a priest. This reveals something remarkable. Patrick came from a family deeply rooted in Christian life. For at least 2 generations, the men of his family had dedicated themselves to Christ. Scripture would likely have been read in the home, prayers offered, Christian festivals observed. Young Patrick grew up hearing about Christ from his earliest years. Yet later in life, Patrick made a painful confession. Despite receiving every spiritual advantage, he had not taken his faith seriously. Writing decades later, he admitted, "I did not know the true God." This surprises many readers. How could the grandson of a priest and the son of a deacon say such a thing? Patrick was not claiming ignorance of Christianity. Rather, he meant that his faith had remained superficial. He knew about God. He did not yet truly know God. He confessed that he and many around him had ignored God's commandments. Like many young people blessed with faithful families, Patrick had inherited religion without making it his own. His honesty gives his testimony extraordinary credibility. He never portrays himself as a childhood saint. He does not claim early holiness. He admits weakness, indifference, and complacency. He admits that it took suffering to awaken his soul. Many saints speak of dramatic conversions after lives of obvious sin. Patrick's story is different. His conversion was quieter. He was not rescued from scandal. He was awakened from comfort. That distinction makes his story deeply relatable. How many people today attend church out of habit? How many know Christian teachings but rarely think about them? How many assume there will always be more time to grow closer to God? Patrick understood that danger because he had lived it. His childhood appears to have been comfortable. His family likely owned land. Their home probably stood near the western coast of Britain, where Roman influence blended with local Celtic traditions. Patrick later mentioned servants in the household, suggesting considerable means. Nothing in his early years hinted at the hardships ahead. He could never have imagined that within a few short years, his comfortable life would vanish almost overnight. While Patrick grew up in relative peace, events beyond his control were unfolding across the Irish Sea. Ireland was unlike Roman Britain. Rome had never conquered the island. No governor ruled there, no legions marched through its valleys. Instead, Ireland was divided into numerous kingdoms ruled by local chieftains. Society revolved around kinship, honor, cattle, and loyalty to one's clan. Druids held great influence as religious leaders, judges, scholars, and advisors to kings. Poets preserved royal histories through memorized tradition. Warriors earned prestige through courage in battle. Raiding neighboring territories was an accepted part of political and economic life. Among these raids were expeditions across the Irish Sea. Irish raiders regularly attacked the western coasts of Roman Britain. They sought livestock, seized valuable goods, and captured people. Young men, women, and children were carried back to Ireland to be sold or forced into slavery. Such raids became increasingly common as Roman military protection weakened during Patrick's youth. For many coastal families, the threat was constant. Few imagined disaster would strike their own home. Patrick certainly did not. He was simply a teenager enjoying the ordinary rhythms of family life. He had no idea that one terrifying day would change everything forever. The son of a respected Christian household, the grandson of a priest, the young Roman citizen whose future seemed secure, was about to lose his freedom, and in losing everything, he would unknowingly begin the journey God had prepared for him since before his birth. Chapter 2. Kidnapped. The day Patrick lost everything. Patrick was about 16 years old when his entire world collapsed. He does not tell us the exact day. He does not describe the season. He gives no dramatic account of the attack. Instead, in a few humble words within his confessio, he writes, "I was taken into captivity in Ireland with many thousands of people." That single sentence speaks volumes. Patrick was not the only victim. He was one among countless men, women, and children swept away during the violent raids that had become increasingly common along the western coast of Roman Britain. For the families left behind, these raids were devastating. Homes burned, livestock stolen, communities scattered, children vanished without warning. Parents searched in vain for loved ones who would never return. For those captured, the future was terrifyingly uncertain. Some were sold into slavery, others forced into hard labor. Many never saw their homeland again. Patrick's own capture likely unfolded with frightening speed. Imagine an ordinary morning, the household awake, servants tending their work, family members moving through familiar routines. Then suddenly, alarm. Ships offshore, armed raiders approaching, shouting, confusion, people running in every direction. The attackers move quickly. They seize whatever they can carry, livestock, valuables, and people. Patrick, only a teenager, is overpowered and taken captive. Whether he struggled, tried to escape, or searched desperately for his parents, we do not know. His writings remain silent. Perhaps the memories were too painful, or perhaps, decades later, those details mattered less to him than the spiritual lessons God drew from them. Bound with other prisoners, Patrick was forced aboard a ship bound for Ireland. The voyage across the Irish Sea may have taken only a few days, depending on weather and departure point. But for Patrick, every mile carried him farther from everything he had ever known. Behind him lay his family, his home, his language, his church, his childhood. Ahead lay complete uncertainty. There would be no comforting letter sent home, no rescue mission, no government negotiating his release. In the 5th century, slavery was a tragic but accepted reality throughout much of Europe. The Roman Empire itself had long depended on slave labor. Although Roman law offered limited protections, countless men and women remained vulnerable to exploitation. Ireland, outside Roman rule, maintained its own forms of slavery. Captives taken in raids were valuable commodities. Strong young people could be put to work as shepherds, farmers, servants, or laborers. Patrick soon became one of them. Somewhere in Northern Ireland, though historians cannot identify the exact location, Patrick was sold to a local master. According to later tradition, that master was named Miliach, a pagan chieftain in what is now County Antrim. This name comes from later sources rather than Patrick's own writings, but it has remained part of Irish tradition for centuries. What Patrick himself tells us is simpler. He became a shepherd, day after day, month after month, year after year. He watched sheep. His new home was not a comfortable farmhouse. Much of his time was spent outdoors, often alone, exposed to Ireland's harsh climate. The mountains where he tended his flock were beautiful, but unforgiving. Cold winds swept across the hills. Rain soaked the landscape. Winter frosts hardened the ground. Long nights tested both body and spirit. Patrick had grown up in a household of relative comfort. Now he owned almost nothing. He had no freedom, no family, no certainty about tomorrow. He could not simply decide to leave. Every morning he awoke still a slave. Every evening he remained one. For 6 long years. It is difficult for modern readers to grasp the emotional weight of such isolation. Patrick was still little more than a boy. He had been separated from everyone he loved. No one knew whether his parents were alive. No one knew whether he himself would survive. Every familiar certainty had vanished. Many in such circumstances would have surrendered to bitterness. Some would have cursed God. Others would have abandoned hope. Patrick's response surprised even him. The suffering that seemed to destroy his life became the very place where God transformed it. Looking back years later, he wrote with gratitude, "The Lord opened the understanding of my unbelief." This is one of the turning points of Christian history. The slavery Patrick never would have chosen became the school in which he learned faith. The lonely hills became his monastery before he had ever seen one. The sheep became silent companions while he learned to pray. No bishop instructed him. No monastery guided him. No famous teacher mentored him. His classroom was creation itself. His teacher was the Holy Spirit. Patrick tells us that during these years, something extraordinary happened within his soul. His love for God grew stronger every day. He began praying constantly, not because anyone required it, and not to impress others. There was no one to impress. Prayer became the air his soul needed to breathe. He wrote, "I prayed many times a day. The love of God and his fear came to me more and more, and my faith grew." Notice the balance: love and holy fear, reverence without terror, trust without complacency. Patrick also describes the intensity of his prayer life. In a single day, I would say as many as 100 prayers, and almost as many at night. Historians understand this not as counting formal prayers one by one, but as describing a continual conversation with God, a life immersed in prayer from morning until night, even while tending sheep, even while walking lonely mountains, even in bitter weather. Patrick's heart remained fixed upon Christ. He continues, "I would rise before dawn to pray in snow, in frost, in rain, and I felt no harm, nor was there any sluggishness in me, because the Spirit was burning within me." These are among the most beautiful lines Patrick ever wrote. Picture the scene: before sunrise, mountains silent, air freezing, a young slave kneels on wet ground. No church surrounds him, no candles burn, no choir sings, no priest celebrates the Eucharist, only wind, darkness, silence, and one soul speaking with God. Those lonely mornings shape the rest of Patrick's life. Long before he preached to kings, he learned to pray alone. Long before he baptized converts, he learned obedience in hidden places. Long before thousands listened to his voice, he first listened to God's. Centuries later, Christians around the world would remember Patrick as the great missionary of Ireland. Patrick remembered himself first as the shepherd who learned to trust Christ while watching sheep. The years of slavery did not destroy him. They prepared him. Yet God was not finished. After 6 years of captivity, when Patrick had almost certainly resigned himself to spending the rest of his life as a slave, something happened that changed everything. One night, while he slept, God spoke, not through thunder, not through an angel in radiant glory, but through a a dream that would send Patrick on one of the most extraordinary escapes in Christian history. Patrick did not yet understand what the dream meant, only that the God who found him on lonely hills was now calling him towards something new. The boy who had lost everything was about to take his first step toward freedom, and toward the mission that would one day change a nation.